Welcome to today's devotional message in our series, Trusting God Always. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, and still, silence. Maybe this message is the sign you didn't know you needed, a quiet whisper in the wilderness you find yourself in. If these words meet you right where you are, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort and assurance in the waiting. Comment below with your favorite Bible promise or the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Let's begin, and let His Word breathe new life into yours. You sit by the window, tracing patterns on the cool glass, watching the world outside rush forward, a blur of activity you feel completely disconnected from. The calendar pages have turned, not just once, but perhaps dozens of times more than you ever anticipated. Each flip of the month feels like another quiet disappointment, another marker of the time past since you poured out that heartfelt prayer. The words still hang in the air of your memory, clear and urgent, the desperate need, the raw longing, the fragile tendril of hope you attach to them. You've done everything you thought you should. You've searched the scriptures, turning pages with weary fingers, looking for a sign, a confirmation, even just a flicker of light in the gathering dusk. You've listened intently in the quiet moments, straining to hear that still, small voice. And yet, the silence persists. It presses in, heavy and thick, filled not with peace, but with unspoken questions that feel like stones in your heart. Did I misunderstand? Was that soft impression, that quiet whisper I truly believed was God's leading, just the echo of my own hopeful heart talking back to me? Does He even see this situation I'm in, this complex web of challenges and uncertainties? Does He care about the ache that lodges in my chest, the gnawing uncertainty that keeps me awake at night, the sheer bone-deep exhaustion of simply holding on? Maybe you've wrestled with these thoughts in the pre-dawn hours, watching the first hesitant light creep into the sky. Or perhaps in the sterile glow of your phone screen late at night, when the world is asleep, but your mind refuses to rest. You've seen breakthrough happen for others, stories of sudden turnarounds, witnessed what seem like instant answers to prayers shared in hushed tones. And while your heart genuinely rejoices for their blessings, a true testament to the grace you believe in, a small, quiet, vulnerable part of you can't help but wonder, when will it be my turn? Am I overlooked? Is God holding back something meant for me? Is He even truly present here, in this long, slow season? This feeling of being stuck in a spiritual holding pattern, where your faith feels less like the soaring freedom of an eagle and more like a tired bird perched precariously on a wire, is profoundly isolating. It feels like a wilderness of waiting, a parched desert of delayed hope stretching out before you. You question the strength of your faith. You question the reality of His presence. You question everything you thought you knew about how God works. But even in this struggle, even in this raw, vulnerable moment of wrestling with doubt, there is a flicker, a tiny ember of belief buried deep within that refuses to be extinguished entirely. This message is for you. It is for the weary soul navigating the long season of waiting. It is for the heart wrestling in the silence, trying to discern God's hand in the unseen. It's a gentle reminder, a lifeline cast into the waves of uncertainty, that God is not absent. He is intimately, profoundly present, even and perhaps especially in the wait that feels endless. This journey of waiting on God's timing is not a punishment for something you did wrong, nor is it a cosmic pause where nothing significant is happening. It is a sacred space, a holy ground where profound things are being forged within you. Things often invisible to the naked eye, hidden beneath the surface of your circumstances. Let's explore this sacred hidden space together, trusting that even here, God is at work. You sit in the silence again, the calendar pages feeling heavier with each passing month. You prayed, you believed, you stepped out in faith, and still, the landscape hasn't changed. It stretches out before you, a flat, monotonous plain of unanswered questions and unmet longings. It feels like nothing is happening. It feels like waiting. Think back to a different kind of waiting, a vast and scorching one. Picture the Israelites, fresh from the unimaginable miracle of the Red Sea. They had seen chains broken, an empire humbled, a path forged through the impossible. Freedom. The promised land felt just ahead, a place of milk and honey, rest and fulfillment. But the journey, meant for weeks, stretched into 40 grinding years. 40 years under a relentless sun, walking through the wilderness. They felt the heat pressing down, tasted the dust on their tongues, heard the constant gnawing of hunger and thirst. Day after day, the same unending horizon, the same challenging terrain. The initial joy of liberation faded, replaced by weariness, frustration, and lament. And a rising tide of doubt. They grumbled against Moses. They questioned God's plan. Did he truly intend to bring them to this promised place? Or had he led them out merely to perish in the sand? Their waiting wasn't a gentle pause. It was a harsh, uncertain wilderness that tested the very core of their faith. This wilderness of waiting has a way of stripping things away. It takes the comfortable illusions we build around control. The idea that if we just plan enough, work hard enough, pray perfectly enough, we can dictate the timeline. It exposes the raw edges of our dependence, showing us how much we rely on immediate answers, on visible progress, on feeling productive and moving forward. When the external markers of growth or change aren't there, the internal landscape feels bare. This season, though difficult, isn't about God forgetting you or punishing you. It's often a season of profound refinement. Like heat purifying metal, the wilderness can burn away the things that hinder your deepest walk with Him. Self-reliance, impatience, fear disguised as caution, faith that rests only on what can be seen. It's here, in the barren spaces, that God cultivates a deep, soul-level trust, a trust that isn't dependent on your surroundings or the speed of your circumstances, but solely on the character of the one who promises. Sometimes, God's greatest work in you happens when it looks like nothing is working for you. Acknowledge the difficulty of your wilderness today. Name the frustration, the fear, the weariness. It is real, and God meets you in its reality. But remember the Israelites. God led them through every step of that daunting journey. He didn't just leave them there. He provided manna, sweet and sustaining, appearing fresh on the ground each morning, a daily miracle in a desolate land. He brought water from a solid rock when their thirst was overwhelming. And perhaps most profoundly, He was visibly present with them, a pillar of cloud by day to shield them from the sun, a pillar of fire by night to guide them and offer warmth and light. Exodus 13:21-22. They didn't have all the answers, but they had His presence and His provision, perfectly timed for their need. Ask Him to reveal His presence and His provision in your wilderness today. Ask Him to open your eyes to the daily mercies, the quiet strength, the unexpected moments of grace that are already here, sustaining you in the waiting. He is leading you, not just through the wilderness, but in it. The calendar pages flip, another year gone, and still the promise feels distant. You know that ache in the soul, the one that whispers, "Has He forgotten? Was it even real?" It's the ancient story of Abraham and Sarah echoing in your own waiting. Imagine them, their hair silvered by time, their bodies long past the season of bearing life, clinging to the outrageous promise that they would cradle a son, the seed of nations. Decades folded into each other. Each sunrise, a silent testament to the delay. The biological clock didn't just tick, it stopped. The possibility, a vibrant bloom, withered under the relentless sun of impossibility. Doubt wasn't just a thought, it was a gnawing companion in the quiet hours. Surely God needs help, they must have thought, their human frailty leading them down the painful detour of Ishmael, a consequence born of trying to help God's cosmic plan along. And when the promise was restated, sharp and clear in their extreme old age, a laugh, born not of joy, but of sheer, bewildered disbelief. Their wait wasn't merely inconvenient. It was a profound challenge to the very nature of what felt possible. A wrestling match between divine promise and earthly reality. This is where God meets us in the wilderness of delay. His promises aren't bound by your watch or calendar. His soon might unfold over years. His timeline, a vast cosmic canvas where seasons you can't see are turning. This delay isn't evidence of His absence or forgetfulness. Often, it's the quiet cultivation before the harvest, a sign that the fullness of time, the perfect alignment of spiritual readiness, personal growth, and external circumstances hasn't yet dawned. Trusting God's timing is perhaps one of the hardest lessons in faith, a surrender to the truth that His ways are infinitely higher, His thoughts deeper than the ocean of our understanding. Isaiah 55, 8-9. He isn't neglecting you. He is meticulously weaving the narrative, preparing both the promise and you for its arrival. The quietness isn't emptiness. It can be the sound of hidden work. So take a moment, right here, in the midst of your waiting. Go back to those promises God has placed in your heart, through His Word, a word spoken over you, or that deep, settled conviction that feels like holy ground. Don't let the length of the delay erode their truth. Don't discard them like wilted leaves. Hold them up to the light again. Instead of focusing on the emptiness you see, ask God to open your spiritual eyes to see Him working, even in the shadows, even behind the scenes you can't penetrate. Ask Him to strengthen your faith, not just for the fulfillment, but in the waiting, believing He is faithful to bring it to pass in His perfect time. He is the God who brings life from barrenness, possibility from impossibility, not by your timing, but by His divine, perfect, always faithful timing. The world rushes past you, a blur of hurried footsteps and shouted names, but yours feels unheard. You sit in the quiet ache of anonymity, perhaps in a job where your efforts go unnoticed, a relationship where your presence feels secondary, or a season of waiting where the dreams God once whispered seem utterly forgotten, lost somewhere between prophecy and reality. Like a seed buried deep in the soil, you feel hidden, unseen, unknown. It's easy to wonder, in the quiet desperation, if God Himself has forgotten where He planted you. If he still remembers the vision he gave you, the purpose he placed within you, think of Joseph, a young man bathed in the favor of his father, adorned with a coat of vibrant colors, a dreamer of divine dreams where even the sun, moon, and stars bowed down to him. He held a vision straight from the heart of God, a promise of future leadership and significance. And then, the descent. His own brothers, fueled by envy and malice, stripped him bare, cast him into a desolate pit, a premature burial for a living soul. Sold into slavery, dragged to a foreign land, ripped from everything familiar. He went from favored son to forgotten servant, from dreamer to a piece of property. Just when a flicker of hope appeared in Potiphar's house, a place where his gifts began to shine despite his circumstances, cruel injustice struck again. Falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, he was thrown into the darkness of a prison cell. Years stretched into an eternity. The vibrant coat was replaced by rags, the dreams replaced by the cold stone floor. He was forgotten by the cupbearer whose life he saved, left to languish in the shadows. Did he sit there, counting the days, the months, the years, wondering about those vivid dreams now buried under layers of pain and neglect? Did he feel utterly unseen and unknown by the very God who had given him that initial, breathtaking vision? His waiting wasn't passive. It was a crucible forged from injustice, isolation, and the crushing weight of anonymity. He wasn't just waiting, he was enduring in the dark. This season of feeling unseen, unknown, whether it's a long-term professional plateau, a struggle for recognition in ministry, or simply the quiet battle of navigating daily life without fanfare or validation, this isn't God shelving you. It's not a sign that your purpose has expired or that your gifts are irrelevant. Sometimes God's most profound work happens in the hidden places, like roots deepening in the soil before the plant breaks through the earth. This season is often a time of intense preparation, a refining fire that purifies character, burns away pride, and teaches profound humility and utter dependence on Him alone. Your greatest growth might happen when you feel smallest. God knows exactly where you are, down to the number of hairs on your head, the deepest longing of your heart, the silent tears you cry in the night. He is using this hidden season, this wilderness of waiting, for a purpose far greater, far more expansive, and far more aligned with His eternal plan than you can currently grasp from your limited vantage point. The silence isn't absence. It's often the sound of God working behind the scenes, orchestrating events you cannot see, preparing you for a moment you cannot yet imagine. Like buried seeds, true growth happens in the dark, away from the applause, fueled only by the unseen nutrients and the patient work of the gardener. If you find yourself in this space, feeling overlooked, undervalued, or stuck in circumstances where your calling seems dormant, remember this: God sees you. He sees you intimately, fully, completely. He knows your name. He knows your struggles, the silent battles you fight, the heart's desires you've almost given up on. He knows the potential He placed within you, and He hasn't forgotten it. Just as He was with Joseph in the lonely confinement of the prison cell, Genesis 39:21 says, "But the Lord was with Joseph. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden." He is with you right where you are. His presence isn't diminished by your obscurity. His power isn't hindered by your lack of recognition. Ask Him to make His presence known to you in a tangible way right now, in this unseen place. Ask Him to open your eyes to see the ways He is working, even in the stillness, even in the shadows. Trust that He is sovereignly authoring your story, and the hidden chapters are just as vital, just as sacred as the ones lived in the light. Even in the darkness, your faith can be a quiet light, shining only for the one who truly sees. The weight settles onto your shoulders like a cloak woven from lead. You've replayed the scenarios 1,000 times. The bills stacked on the counter, a silent accusation. The doctor's words echoing, painting uncertain futures. The chasm in a broken relationship, wider each day. The quiet dread of job uncertainty, a knot tightening in your gut. The sheer crushing weight of worry presses down, clouding your mind, stealing your sleep, making even simple tasks feel monumental. It feels like you're trying to walk through deep mud, each step dragging you down. And in this heavy space, doubt whispers insidious questions, slithering into the corners of your heart. What if God doesn't come through this time? What if I'm the exception, the one left to handle this impossible burden alone? What if my faith, this tiny mustard seed I cling to, simply isn't strong enough to move this mountain? This internal battle, waged in the quiet hours of the waiting, in the desolate valleys of uncertainty, is exhausting. It drains your spirit, dims your hope, and makes you feel utterly depleted. The very act of living feels like an uphill climb against a relentless wind. But listen, soul wrestling in the storm. This feeling of being overwhelmed by worry and doubt, it is a natural, deeply human response to the unknown, to the feeling of helplessness when life throws its hardest punches. You are not flawed or failing for feeling this way. Yet, these moments of intense pressure are not just burdens, they are also invitations. They are God's often disguised calls to a deeper, more radical faith. Jesus, who walked the dusty roads and saw human anxiety up close, spoke directly to this fear. His commands, "Do not be afraid, do not worry," were never dismissals of real struggle. They were always anchored by reassurances of God's extravagant care. Look at the birds. Consider the lilies, he essentially says. If God tends to them with such detail, how much more will He care for you? He knows your anxieties intimately. He sees the weight pressing down, the whispers of doubt. He isn't asking you to muster up superhuman strength or perfect faith. He is inviting you, compelling you even, to take the weight, the worry, the doubt, and consciously, deliberately, cast it upon Him. Why? Not because you are strong enough to let go, but because He cares for you. It is His caring that is the foundation for your casting. Your surrender becomes His strength. So what worries are weighing you down today? What specific scenarios are you replaying? Name them, quietly or aloud. Picture each one: a bill, a diagnosis, a face, a fear, as a heavy stone. Now, consciously, as a profound act of faith, imagine lifting each stone, one by one, and releasing it into God's gentle, strong hands. Repeat the truth, letting it sink from your mind to your heart. He cares for me. Therefore I cast this worry on Him. Let His care be the river that carries the weight away. You sit on the edge of possibility, or perhaps on the edge of despair. The answer hasn't come. The door hasn't opened. The healing hasn't manifested. And in the quiet, sometimes not so quiet, moments, a voice whispers that waiting means you are stuck, that you are doing nothing, that God is doing nothing. You feel paralyzed, suspended in time, simply sitting idly until hopefully God finally decides to act. It feels like a vast, empty space where nothing productive can happen. But biblical waiting is fiercely active. It is a posture of anticipation, yes, but also one of devoted labor. Imagine a farmer. He does not simply plant the seed in faith and then retreat to his porch, idly watching the horizon until the stalks burst forth. No, he plants in faith, trusting the unseen forces of nature and the divine hand that orchestrates them. But then he tends the field. He removes the weeds that threaten to choke the young shoots. He waters the crops, providing nourishment. He checks for pests. He repairs the fences. He prepares the soil for the next season, even as he waits for the current harvest. He works while he waits. His waiting is not passive observation. It is diligent cultivation. This is the divine rhythm of waiting on God. While you long and pray for a specific outcome, a resolution to a gnawing problem, a dramatic intervention, you are simultaneously called to continue walking in faithful obedience to what He has already revealed. He isn't waiting for you to figure it out perfectly. He is asking you to trust Him in the doing of today. This means cultivating your relationship with Him with even greater intentionality, poring over His Word like a farmer examines the soil, engaging in prayer not just as a petition for the future, but as a conversation about the present moment. It means serving right where you are planted, recognizing that the small patch of ground God has given you today is holy ground, ripe for your effort and love. Waiting is a season for growth in spiritual disciplines. Patience blooms in the parched earth of unanswered prayers. Perseverance is forged in the heat of delay, and faith becomes less theoretical and more visceral when you must trust without seeing. It's about listening for His daily guidance, the gentle nudge, the quiet wisdom whispered on the wind, rather than holding out only for the thunderclap of the major answer. Waiting isn't stagnation. It is often the fertile ground where God prepares you for the very thing you are waiting for, deepening your roots so you can bear the weight and beauty of the coming harvest. Sometimes, the greatest work is done in the hidden season. So what is God asking you to do today? Not tomorrow, not when the big answer comes, but this moment. What small act of obedience can you engage in? Perhaps it's offering forgiveness when you feel overlooked. Maybe it's serving someone in need, even when your own needs feel overwhelming. It could be simply spending 5 extra minutes in quiet presence with Him. It might be tending to the neglected corners of your own soul. These are the seeds you plant and water while you wait. Focus on faithfulness in the present moment, doing whatever is before you, heartily, as for the Lord, and not for men. For you serve the Lord Christ. Colossians 3:23-24. Your labor in the waiting is never in vain. It is the work of a soul, trusting the author. Even when the chapter feels long and still, you feel the heavy weight of waiting. Another day closes, looking much like the one before. No visible signs, no grand pronouncement, just the quiet, sometimes suffocating, sameness. You whispered your heart's longing into the silence again this morning, perhaps for the 100th time, and the only reply was the ticking clock, the distant hum of a world that seems to be moving forward without you. Doubt is a persistent vine, isn't it? It wraps itself around the heart in the darkness, whispering questions you don't want to hear. Is anything happening? Am I forgotten here? Imagine a seed buried deep in the earth. It feels forgotten, doesn't it? surrounded by dirt, in complete darkness, pressed in on all sides. Above ground, there's nothing to see. No sprout reaching for the sun, no visible progress. You wouldn't know anything was alive there if you hadn't placed it yourself. It looks like an ending, or at best, a state of inert dormancy. This hidden phase, unseen and silent, can feel a lot like our own seasons of waiting. The job that hasn't materialized, the relationship that hasn't healed, the breakthrough that remains just over the horizon, perpetually out of sight. It feels like the story has paused, like the camera has stopped rolling, leaving you in the dark. But that darkness, that hidden place, pressed in by the soil, it's where the miracle truly begins. Below the surface, unseen, untouched by the immediate weather, the sun, the rain, the wind that will one day challenge it, roots are pushing down. They are seeking the life-giving water, anchoring the future plant with fierce, silent determination. This work is violent in its effort, quiet in its execution, and absolutely essential for survival. Without these roots, reaching deep and finding nourishment in the hidden places, the seedling would be swept away by the first storm, unable to support the weight of its own bloom, let alone the fruit it is destined to bear. This is a profound paradox. The deepest, most crucial growth happens where the light cannot reach. This is God's work in the waiting. He isn't delaying, He is deepening. The silence isn't God's absence. It's the sound of Him working below the surface of your circumstances, below the surface of your understanding. The discomfort you feel, the patience required, the feeling of being stalled while others seem to flourish, that is the soil pressing in, strengthening the roots of your faith. He is building the invisible infrastructure of your resilience, preparing you not just for the breakthrough you pray for, but to sustain the blessing when it comes. This hidden process is quiet, often uncomfortable, but it is the most vital season of cultivation. Like the wilderness prepared a leader, this waiting is equipping you. What feels like emptiness is actually fertile ground. What looks like nothing is actually everything essential taking root. Trust the profound truth that what is unseen right now is often more significant than what is seen. Fix your eyes not on what is visible above ground, the lack of progress, the unchanging landscape of your situation. Fix your eyes on the unseen work of God beneath the surface. 2 Corinthians 4:18. Believe that He is cultivating deep roots of faith, patience, and strength within you during this waiting period. Every moment you choose trust over despair, every breath you offer up in quiet hope, every time you remind your heart of His faithfulness, that is a root growing deeper. Remind yourself that the strength you need for the storms of tomorrow is being built now, in the quiet, hidden place of today. Trust the author, even when you can't see the chapter turning. The air is thick with waiting. You've paced the floor, checked the clock, reread the message, stared at the empty inbox 100 times over. The specific thing you've petitioned God for, the job, the relationship repair, the healing, the breakthrough, seems miles away, maybe even receding. You feel stuck, a single piece on a board where nothing else is moving. Your mind races with the frantic questions. Why the delay? Is God even hearing? Is it me? The struggle is real, sharp, a persistent hum of anxiety beneath the surface of your daily life. You've tried pushing doors, pulling levers, forcing outcomes, only to meet resistance, or worse, an echoing silence. It feels like the desert, hot and still, where your faith feels like a dying plant. But sometimes the stillness, the apparent lack of movement, isn't about your readiness alone. It's about the grander choreography of heaven and earth. Consider the profound truth woven into history itself. God often prepares the ground before he brings forth the harvest. Think of the fullness of time when Christ arrived on the scene. Galatians 4:4. Was that moment random? Not at all. Centuries were orchestrated. Roman roads were built, creating pathways for the gospel. The Greek language became common, a universal tongue for the message to spread. Jewish expectation was high, a yearning for a Messiah. God didn't just prepare the baby in the manger. He prepared the world for his arrival. His plan is a tapestry, woven not just with your thread, but with countless others across time and space. Your waiting period, the silence that stretches before you, might coincide with God working on other vital pieces of the cosmic puzzle. You might be subtly shifting hearts, a future employer, a reluctant family member, a necessary contact that you know nothing about. He could be dissolving unseen obstacles, moving mountains of opposition, or aligning opportunities that you can't possibly perceive from your vantage point. His plan is intricate, interconnected, vast beyond your wildest imagination. It's not just about your timeline. It's about his divine calendar for the entire narrative he is writing. This is the power of Romans 8:28 in action. God is working all things together, the seen and the unseen, the active and the waiting, for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Your delay isn't a denial. It can be divine orchestration. So here is the quiet call to your spirit. Rest. Rest in the profound, liberating knowledge that God is sovereign over all the details. Release the heavy burden of needing to control every variable, to understand every single reason for the pause. You don't need to see the subterranean roots growing to know the tree is alive and changing. Trust that he is working meticulously behind the scenes, shifting the soil, arranging the stones, preparing the perfect ground for his perfect timing to unfold in your life. The stillness you feel is not stagnation in heaven. It is purposeful preparation on earth. Surrender the need to push and find peace in knowing he is perfectly positioning everything, including you, for the moment when his will bursts forth in undeniable glory. You sit in the quiet space, the one that stretches out endlessly between the last thing you felt God clearly do and the next thing you desperately hope he will. The wind whispers through the eaves, a sound like unanswered prayers echoing in a hollow room. You've done the praying, the seeking, the waiting, and yet here you are in the lull. It feels empty, stagnant, like a desert road with no destination in sight. But the silence you perceive isn't always an absence of God's work. Sometimes it's the sound of him working differently, deeply, internally. Think of the shepherds who spent 40 years tending flocks in the wilderness before a burning bush spoke into Moses. 40 years, not 40 days, not 40 weeks. 40 years of sand, sun, sheep, and silence. This wasn't time wasted. It was time invested in solitude, in humility, in learning dependence on the rhythms of nature, and perhaps the quiet stirrings of the divine when no one else was watching. Or consider Paul, struck blind on the Damascus road, receiving a vision that changed everything, only to disappear into the Arabian desert for a season. He didn't immediately launch his ministry. He spent time alone with God, processing, learning, being reshaped in the silence. These lulls, these wilderness periods, were not pauses in the journey. They were the intense, often uncomfortable classrooms where God did his most crucial preparatory work. He wasn't just waiting to do something for them. He was waiting to do something in them. This season of quiet, this space of waiting you inhabit, is not a void. It is a crucible. God is asking, what is he teaching you here in the stillness? Is it the profound, humbling grace of patience when your natural inclination is to rush? Is it a radical dependence on him because every other crutch has been kicked away by the waiting? Is he exposing the idols hidden in the comfortable corners of your heart, the things you unconsciously rely on more than him when everything feels uncertain? These lessons, though sometimes sharp, even painful, are not meant to punish. They are designed to purify. They are invaluable for your spiritual maturity, forging a deeper reliance on the one who holds your future. This lull is not a holding pattern. It is a classroom without walls, a school of the soul where faith is not just preached, but lived, wrestled with, and ultimately strengthened. It is where the hidden roots of trust grow deep beneath the soil before the visible growth appears above ground. He is preparing you, not just for the next assignment, but to be the person who can stand firm when the assignment comes. Be a student in this season. Lean into the discomfort, not with resignation, but with curiosity. Approach the waiting with an open heart, asking the ultimate teacher, what do you want me to learn here in this space? This isn't passive endurance, it's active receptivity. It's choosing to believe that even when you don't see the work, the master potter is still shaping the clay. Knowing that every lesson, every moment of patient dependence, every humbling exposure of your own limited strength is preparing you for the future God has planned. The future that requires a different kind of faith, forged in the quiet fire of the waiting. Like the psalmist learned through affliction, Psalm 119:71. Sometimes the most precious truths are found not in the mountaintop experiences, but in the valley's hush. Let your prayer be, teach me, Lord, in this lull. Another day turns to evening, and the answer still hasn't come. You feel the familiar weight settle in your chest, the quiet disappointment that whispers, maybe this isn't happening. The world outside your window is a blur of relentless motion, demanding instant data, immediate responses, next-day delivery. This rhythm of urgency can seep into the sacred space of your soul, making you tap your spiritual foot, wondering why God's updates aren't pushed straight to your inbox. Why is this wilderness season lasting so long? Why hasn't the promised river reached your parched ground yet? You've been praying, really praying, pouring out your heart like water, maybe even fasting, seeking some sign, some shift, something that looks like progress on your preferred timeline. And the silence feels vast, sometimes deafening. It's easy to slip into the mindset that God is somehow delayed, perhaps busy elsewhere, or worse, that he simply isn't hearing, isn't caring enough to act now. But this is where our human clock clashes with divine timekeeping. Our perception is bound by sunrise and sunset, by deadlines and appointments. God, he existed before time was measured, and he will exist when it ceases. 1,000 years are truly like a day to him, and a day like 1,000 years. 2 Peter 3:8. His delay isn't a malfunction. It's an operation on a scale we can barely comprehend. His timing is perfect, not because it aligns with your comfort or your convenience, but because it aligns with His infinite knowledge. He sees the end from the beginning. He understands the intricate tapestry of your life, how this moment of waiting prepares you, protects you, and protects you, positions you for something you can't even perceive from your current vantage point. His not yet is often a divine act of sculpting your soul, strengthening your roots, ensuring the ground is truly ready for the seed He is about to plant. It's the gentle hand that keeps you from running ahead into a storm you're not equipped to weather, or allows you to linger in the quiet until the exact moment the harvest is ripe. So, perhaps the deepest act of faith in this moment isn't begging harder for speed, but releasing your white-knuckled grip on the clock face. Surrender your calendar, your preferred deadlines, your urgent emails of expectation to the one who created time itself. Acknowledge that His delay isn't denial. It's simply operating on a schedule that serves your ultimate good and fits into a story far grander than your immediate circumstances. It is good, oh so profoundly good, to quietly wait for the salvation of the Lord. Lamentations 3:25. Trust that this season of waiting is not wasted. It is holy ground, preparing you for the fullness of His perfect appointed time, which will always be worth the quiet, patient, trusting wait. The silence isn't empty. It's loud with unanswered questions. You sit in the quiet space between the prayer and the manifestation, and doubt whispers like a chill wind under the door. The path you thought was clear has dissolved into mist. The expected outcome didn't arrive. Your heart tightens with the familiar ache of uncertainty. Is He truly good? The whisper asks. Does He remember? Does He care enough? You look at the circumstances, stark and unyielding, and they seem to contradict everything you've been told about a loving, faithful God. It can feel impossibly easy in these moments of extended waiting and unclear direction to let doubt about God's goodness and faithfulness take root. This is the crucial turning point, the wilderness crossroad where faith must shift its gaze. It's no longer sustainable to trust for the specific job, the healing, the restored relationship, the open door. Those things are important. They are real needs laid bare before heaven. But the foundation must be deeper. This is where faith shifts from trusting for something to trusting the person who holds everything. It's the profound, anchoring realization that the answer isn't the desired outcome itself, but the unchanging nature of the one orchestrating all things. Think of Job, stripped bare of everything he held dear: family, wealth, health, reputation. In the ash heap of his life, while grappling with unthinkable pain and confusion, he declared with a faith forged in the furnace, "Though He slay me, yet will I trust Him." His trust wasn't for restoration at that moment. It was in the character of God Himself, even when that character seemed inscrutable or harsh through the lens of His suffering. The spiritual bedrock of enduring faith in seasons of prolonged waiting and profound uncertainty is a deep, unwavering trust in God's unchanging character. He is good. He is faithful. He is sovereign over the chaos. He is love, even when love's expression feels like refinement by fire. He cannot lie. He cannot break a single promise He has made. When your circumstances scream one thing, pain, abandonment, hopelessness, and what you know of God's character declares another: peace, presence, unfailing hope. You are faced with a choice. Do you believe your temporary, storm-tossed perception, or do you cling to the eternal, solid ground of his nature? It is trusting that the potter's hands are good, even when the clay feels stretched and reshaped in ways you didn't anticipate. True faith isn't always understanding the divine process. It is knowing the divine person and resting in his perfect integrity. Take a moment now, wherever you are, to gently shift your focus. Look away from the turbulent waves of what you are waiting for and fix your eyes, your heart, your weary soul on who God is. Meditate on his attributes like quiet streams refreshing a parched land. His faithfulness, he has never failed. His love, boundless, unconditional, pursuing. His power, able to speak worlds into existence, able to hold your fragile heart together. Let his character, not your changing feelings or challenging circumstances, be the unbreakable anchor for your soul in this storm of uncertainty. Psalm 9, verse 10 reminds us that those who know his name, who know his character, will trust in him, because he, the Lord, does not forsake those who seek him. Trusting his character doesn't make the waiting easy, but it makes it bearable, grounding your spirit when the ground beneath your feet feels like it's crumbling. You've walked the path, perhaps dusty and long, waiting for the landscape to change. The future you envisioned still sits on the horizon, hazy and distant. It sounds strange, even cruel, to talk about finding joy in this season of holding your breath, in this space between here and there. Especially when the waiting is not just passive, but actively painful or laced with frustration. It's not the bubbling excitement you might feel on Christmas morning. It's often a quiet ache or a persistent question mark. But joy, you see, is a different current than happiness. Happiness is like sunlight on a fair weather day, lovely, warm, dependent on the external climate. Joy? Joy is the deep wellspring within, untouched by the shifting winds and sudden storms outside. It's a quiet, profound confidence anchored not in your circumstances, but in the unshakable reality of who God is and your belonging in Christ. Think of the Apostle Paul, writing from the cold, damp stones of a prison cell. He didn't just endure there. He sang hymns and wrote letters brimming with encouragement, declaring, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I will say, rejoice." Philippians 4:4. His reality was chains. His internal state was rejoicing. That is the paradox of kingdom joy. It flourishes in the most unlikely soil. Where does this capacity for joy come from in the desolate wilderness of waiting? It springs from the absolute assurance that God is not distant, but intimately present with you, walking every step alongside you, his presence a lamp in the darkness. It arises from the unwavering belief that he is meticulously weaving all things, even this difficult pause, together for your ultimate good, even when you cannot trace his hand. And it flows from the secure hope already deposited within you, the finished work of Jesus on the cross, the promise of eternal life, the knowledge that your true home and ultimate fulfillment are not bound by earthly timelines, but secured in Christ. The shift isn't about pretending the wait isn't hard. It's about shifting your gaze from the unmet desire, the job not yet landed, the relationship not yet healed, the prayer not yet answered in the way you hoped, and intentionally focusing on the present reality of God's faithful presence and the countless promises already fulfilled in Jesus. The greatest promise of all, redemption, forgiveness, access to God Himself, that is already yours. You can, even now, cultivate gratitude for the small mercies, for the breath in your lungs, for the quiet whispers of His Spirit, for the fact that you are loved unconditionally. You can intentionally carve out moments of peace, moments where you disconnect from the anxious future and simply be present with God, finding rest in the knowledge that He holds it all. Seek His face, pour out your heart, listen for His gentle reassurance. For it is in His presence, right here, right now, that there is fullness of joy. Psalm 16:11. What can you genuinely find to be grateful for today, even as the waiting presses in? How might you deliberately create spaces to simply be with God, cultivating that deep peace that surpasses understanding? His presence isn't a reward after the wait. It's the source of strength during it. It is the hidden manna in the wilderness, sustaining you until the promised land. You sit in the quiet, the heavy cloak of waiting settled around your shoulders. It feels like an endless horizon of not yet. The days blur into weeks, the weeks into months, and the promise you're holding on to feels further away with each passing moment. Is this how it's meant to be? This stagnant silence, this aching uncertainty? Waiting can so easily morph into a wilderness of despair, where hope withers like unwatered plants. But waiting, in God's economy, is not intended as a desolate pause. It is designed as a season ripe for hopeful expectation. Think of the disciples after Jesus ascended into the heavens. They were given a promise: the Holy Spirit would come. They didn't know the day or the hour, the exact shape the promise would take, or the power it would unleash. But they didn't disperse in fear or fall into quiet despondency. Acts 1, verses 4 to 14 tells us they went back to the upper room. And what did they do there? They waited, not passively, watching the door with gloom, but together. They devoted themselves to prayer. Their waiting wasn't marked by despair, but by anticipation. They gathered, not knowing the how or when, but filled with a quiet, potent expectation for the fulfillment of God's word. Their waiting room became a sanctuary of hopeful prayer, a crucible of shared anticipation. This is the profound shift God invites us into. Hope, as the scripture in Hebrews 6, verse 19 describes, is not a flimsy wish or a hopeful guess. It is an anchor for the soul, confident and sure, reaching into the unseen reality where God resides. True hope is the confident expectation of what God will do, firmly tethered to His unchanging character and His unbreakable promises. Waiting with this kind of expectation means actively engaging with the present, not just enduring it. It means looking for His hand, listening for His voice in the subtle movements of your life, believing deeply that He is orchestrating behind the veil of your circumstances. It means trusting that even when you cannot see the full tapestry, the master weaver is at work, threading light into the darkness, purpose into the delay. It is the beautiful paradox of resting in stillness while your spirit actively anticipates movement. The real-world fear of waiting often centers on control, or the lack thereof. Anxiety whispers that if you aren't pushing, striving, or seeing tangible progress, nothing is happening. Loss feels permanent, and doubt tries to convince you the promise was a mirage. But waiting with expectation is a defiant posture against these fears. It's an act of courage fueled by faith. Renew your hope today, right here in this moment of waiting. Bring God's track record of faithfulness to the forefront of your mind. The Red Seas parted, the wildernesses sustained, the impossible doors opened. Remind yourself of the mountain peaks you've already stood on after navigating the deepest valleys. Pray, not with weary resignation, but with renewed expectation, believing God hears every whisper and is working according to His perfect, breathtaking plan and timing. Ask Him, right now, to fill you with that vibrant, hopeful anticipation that marked the upper room, transforming your waiting from a burden into a place of expectant encounter. The heat rises, surrounding you, pressing in from all sides. This waiting doesn't feel like quiet stillness. It feels like a furnace. An intense, unbearable pressure builds, and sometimes you fear you are simply being consumed, melting away under the strain of unfulfilled longing or unanswered prayer. Every doubt, every fear, every insecurity you thought you had conquered seems to boil to the surface, stark and unavoidable in the glare of this relentless process. This is the crucible, the intense fire God sometimes uses, not to destroy you, but to refine you. Think of gold. It goes into the furnace, not to be annihilated, but to be purified. The intense heat doesn't diminish the gold. It reveals the dross, the impurities clinging to its surface, hidden within its core. The fire burns away only what is not truly gold. In the same way, the heat of waiting, the pressure of trial, brings the impurities in your faith, the hidden dependencies, the self-reliance, the subtle idols, the shallow motives, to the forefront. They are not meant to shatter you, but to be burned away. It's a painful process, watching things you perhaps didn't even know were there rise and dissolve in the flames. But God, the divine refiner, sits by the furnace, His eye never leaving the metal, knowing precisely when the dross is gone and His image is reflected clearly in the surface. This refining fire is not evidence of God's absence, but of His intimate, purposeful presence. He is meticulously working, shaping something precious and enduring within you. As the Apostle Peter reminds us, trials come so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. The very things this fire is burning away are often the things that weigh you down, the hidden hindrances preventing you from fully receiving the blessing, the peace, the transformation He is preparing you for when this season ends. You are not being consumed, you are being cleansed. Can you see this season of intense waiting, this trial, not as abandonment, but as a divine refining process? Pause here, in the midst of the heat. Gently ask God to show you what He is revealing in your heart, what impurities He might be purifying through this experience. It takes courage to look into the fire, to admit what is being brought to the surface. But He is right there with you. Surrender to the heat, not as a victim, but as one yielding to the refiner's skilled hand. Trust that He has a specific, loving purpose for this fire, and that what emerges will be stronger, purer, and more radiant than you could have imagined. The waiting isn't empty, it's formative. The pressure isn't meaningless, it's preparatory. You are being forged in the fire for His glory. The silence stretches thin, a canvas reflecting back only your own weary face. You've run every calculation, pulled every string, knocked on every door until your knuckles are raw. You tried harder, prayed longer, fasted stricter. You marshaled every ounce of will, every strategy learned, every resource scraped together. And still, the mountain hasn't moved. The promised riverbed remains dry. The answer you begged for feels further away than ever. This space, this barren land at the end of your own capabilities, feels like failure. It feels like being stranded, stripped bare under a vast, indifferent sky. Your plans crumbled. Your strength gave out. The carefully constructed dam of your self-reliance finally broke, and you are left adrift in a sea of absolute inability. It's humiliating. It's terrifying. It's the place where you stare into the abyss of zero. Zero ability to fix it yourself. Zero options left in your hands. Zero power to force the breakthrough you desperately need. Yet this is not the end of the story. This is the hinge. This is the sacred pause, engineered not by chance, but by a Father who loves you too much to let you find your ultimate security in anything less than Him. The end of your strength is not a punishment. It is a gift, carefully wrapped in the rough paper of frustration and despair. It's a necessary stripping away, like a vine pruned back hard so it can bear more fruit later. Your perceived failure is the precise moment when God begins to clear the stage, preparing it for a display of His power that could never have happened while you were still trying to play the lead role. Think of the disciples in the storm, bailing water frantically with all their might, until finally they woke Jesus, crying, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" It was only when they reached the end of their own nautical skills that they witnessed Him calm the wind and the waves with a single word. Or consider the widow with only a little flour and oil, preparing her last meal, until Elijah's request brought her to the end of her meager pantry, making space for God's unending provision. He often waits until you are completely out of options to reveal that He was always the only option that mattered. This realization brings you to the threshold of divine dependence. It's the profound, sometimes painful truth that true strength isn't found in doubling down on your own effort when things get tough, but in gracefully, completely letting go and leaning into the one who is never weak. It's the paradox the Apostle Paul lived when he boasted in his weaknesses, understanding that his limitations were the very stage upon which Christ's power could shine most brightly. "For when I am weak, then I am strong," he declared, 2 Corinthians 12:10, recognizing that his human frailty was the prerequisite for experiencing God's indomitable might. God isn't cruel by leading you to this edge. He is kind. He knows that the peace that surpasses understanding isn't available to the self-sufficient heart. It resides only in the one who has learned to cast their entire weight, their future, their very breath upon Him. Your weakness is not an obstacle to God. It is your invitation to Him. He delights in being your source, your strength, your rescuer. He's not waiting for you to figure it out, so you can finally qualify for His help. He's waiting for you to admit you can't figure it out, so He can step in and show you what He can do. It requires a conscious, moment-by-moment choice to pivot from striving to trusting, from managing to yielding. Take a quiet moment now. Where in your life, right now, are you still trying to muscle through? Is it a relationship you're trying to fix with sheer willpower? A financial struggle you're attempting to solve with frantic effort? A personal habit you're fighting with grit alone? A future plan you're trying to engineer with absolute control? Look honestly at the area where you feel most depleted, most ineffective, most at the end of yourself. That very place is God's invitation to a deeper dependence. Surrender that effort. Lay down the tools of your own limited strength. Consciously choose to lean into God today. Acknowledge your absolute dependence on Him for wisdom, for strength, for provision, for peace, for the very next step. He isn't disappointed in your weakness. He is drawn to it because it creates the sacred space for His power to flow unhindered. He delights in being your source, your shepherd, your strong tower. Let your inability be the fertile ground where His divine sufficiency can finally take root and flourish. Your greatest moments of strength are often born from your deepest wells of surrender. You've walked the long road, haven't you? The path stretching endlessly before you, marked only by the dust of repeated prayers and the quiet echo of unanswered questions. You sat in the silence, wondering if your prayer was even heard. You wrestled with the how, the when, the why isn't it happening. Doubts, like desert winds, whispered of forgotten promises and locked doors. And then, often when you least expect it, or perhaps when you finally released your grip on how and when it should happen, the breakthrough comes. It arrives not with a trumpet blast you anticipated, but perhaps a quiet shift in the current, a new clarity in the fog, a message you weren't looking for. The door finally opens, not always the one you were knocking on, but the right one. The situation shifts, a stone rolled away from a place of stagnation. The answer arrives, often veiled in a form you didn't recognize initially. A seed germinating not in direct sunlight, but hidden in the dark earth of your waiting season. Looking back now, a gentle light illuminating the path behind you, you can often see the intricate way God orchestrated it all. You see the wilderness detours that built endurance you didn't know you needed. You see the moments of forced stillness that cleared the noise of your own striving. The waiting season wasn't just empty time, wasn't God ignoring you. It was essential preparation, a divine refinement. Perhaps the answer you wanted would have crushed you before you were ready to carry its weight. Or perhaps the timing protected you from unseen pitfalls. Breakthroughs in God's timing are often more impactful, more sustainable, and bring Him greater glory because they arrive at the perfect moment, after the necessary internal work of surrender, trust, and transformation has been done in you, and the external pieces have been moved into place by His sovereign hand. The purpose wasn't just the answer itself, the open door, the healed relationship, the provided resource. No, the deeper purpose was the journey of faith and transformation that led you there. The wait made you ready, tempering your spirit like steel in a furnace, teaching your heart a deeper rhythm of trust than you ever knew before. He is a God who specializes in impossible solutions, a master of divine appointments that connect threads you didn't even know existed. While you waited, He was working. While you doubted, He was preparing the ground. Hold on to the assurance that God does bring breakthrough. His nature is to move on behalf of those who trust Him. Trust that when He moves, it will be in perfect time and in a way that confirms His faithfulness and power in ways you couldn't have engineered yourself. Prepare your heart now, even in the quiet, to recognize and celebrate His hand when it arrives. For it will arrive, not just as a solution, but as a testimony to His perfect love and unwavering promise. The journey of waiting on God's timing unfolds not as a straight path, but a winding trail through seasons of pain, doubt, and hard-won lessons, eventually leading to hope rediscovered. You know this path intimately. You've walked through valleys where the silence felt deafening, stood on peaks overlooking barren landscapes of unanswered prayers, and navigated the wilderness of questions with no immediate reply. It's easy, in these moments, to wonder if God is distant, if He is even aware of the ache in your chest or the tears that sting your eyes in the quiet hours. But the truth, etched into the fabric of existence, is that God is never distant, never uncaring during your wait. He is intimately involved, His hands shaping circumstances you cannot see, His presence a constant hum beneath the surface of your perceived reality. He is working in unseen ways, preparing you and your circumstances for the fullness of His plan. Think of the roots of a mighty oak tree. They grow deepest and strongest, hidden beneath the earth, unseen, preparing the tree to withstand storms and reach towards the sun. Your waiting season is often a season of hidden root growth. The silence you experienced wasn't emptiness. It was often the quiet space where God was building your foundation, strengthening your spiritual core, and refining your character like precious metal in the fire. He was teaching you, patiently, lovingly, to hear His faintest whisper above the clamor of your anxieties, the noise of the world, and the loud voices of your own fears. The delay wasn't a denial of your heart's cry. It was the intricate unfolding of His perfect timing. He sees the vast tapestry of time and circumstance, aligning details you couldn't possibly see from your limited vantage point. Your prayer is not a single thread in isolation. It is woven into His grand design, perfectly timed to intersect with other threads He is weaving for your good and His glory. This cosmic choreography happens in the waiting. The feeling of being unseen wasn't because you were forgotten or invisible to the God who numbers the stars and the hairs on your head. It was often a sacred season of hidden growth, a chrysalis moment preparing you for visibility and impact in His appointed season. You were hidden, not forgotten, prepared, not abandoned. Ultimately, trusting God always, especially in the profound challenge of the waiting, is about resting not just in the future promise of an outcome, but in the vibrant, unwavering reality of His present presence. He is here, right now, breathing peace into the spaces where fear resides. It's about finding peace, not in having all the answers or controlling the timeline, but in the unwavering truth of who He is, faithful beyond measure, good in His very nature, sovereign over all things, and eternally, fiercely loving towards you. He is holding you in His hands right now, a tender embrace, stronger than any storm. Your worth, your value, is not tied to the answer you receive or the speed at which it arrives, but to your unchangeable, beautiful identity as His beloved child. That is your true foundation. So, this is an invitation. Lean back into His embrace. Release the vice-like grip of trying to control the timeline, of forcing doors open, of demanding answers on your schedule. Breathe deeply, slowly, letting His peace fill your lungs and calm your spirit. Remember that the God who flung stars into existence with a word and knows the intricate details of your being is intimately aware of your situation, your longing, your pain. He is not late, is not absent. He is with you, working all things, even the confusing, painful, silent things for your ultimate good and His eternal glory. Rest in Him. His peace is your portion, a river flowing even here in the beautiful, challenging, sacred, and often silent space of waiting. Even in the profound quiet, His presence sings over you, a lullaby of hope and unwavering love. They didn't see the end, but they trusted the author, and that was enough.